Hezbollah, take on Hezbollah, which is a deeply entrenched Lebanese social and political and paramilitary movement.
France has offered to mediate an end to hostilities. What could that look like, and would they be an appropriate peace broker in this setting?
Well, sadly and tragically, France is the only power that is trying very much to de-escalate. France is the only European power that's really trying to basically urge Israel not to escalate, in particular, all-out ground offensive in Lebanon. Sadly, I mean, Israeli Prime Minister listens to one man, and that's Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has the final word, not President Macron. And it seems that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has a green light from President Trump, and now the attention is on Iran, given the fact that in the past 3 weeks, all-out war, a region-wide conflict. So hardly anyone is paying attention to Lebanon at this particular stage because Iran is more important given the economic consequences, global economic consequences. So without intervention by the United States, by Trump, I fear that Israeli Prime Minister will use this particular moment to implement the so-called Gaza model in Lebanon and raise villages and create a buffer zone, as it did between 1982 and 2000 in Lebanon.
Over 1 million Lebanese have been displaced since the fighting started. Tens of thousands of Syrians have in turn left Lebanon. Looking ahead, how is this front of the war going to affect the region?
Well, I mean, let's be direct. Israel has displaced 1 million Lebanese. This is collective punishment by Israel in order to exert pressure on both the Lebanese government and Hezbollah. And the fact is, this really could become, this massive humanitarian crisis could basically have major impact on state capacity. The Lebanese state could collapse. You might have a huge migration crisis, as the world witnessed during the Syrian war between 2011 and 2023. So the reality is the humanitarian crisis in Lebanon, unless Europe and unless the United States and the international community basically intervenes in order to stop Israel's march to all-out war in Lebanon, the humanitarian crisis in Lebanon could become Europe's crisis in a few months or a new year. And the question really is, where is Europe? Why is Europe not really doing more in order to stop this, humanitarian crisis and Israel's blanket evacuation orders that basically displacing more Lebanese as in the next few weeks and next few months?
That's Fawaz Georges, Professor of Middle Eastern Politics and International Relations at the London School of Economics. Thanks for sharing your view on all of this today with us.
Thank you.
Well, in Iran itself, tensions remain high as the regime, under immense pressure from the outside, is doing all it can to keep a lid on popular unrest. Last night, authorities warned people to stay indoors on what is traditionally an occasion for street celebrations ahead of the Persian New Year. Video posted on X showed people defying those orders, like here in Tehran. But as security force vehicles arrived at the scene, people can be seen quickly dispersing as the sound of gunfire rings out. Opposition groups say there were similar gatherings in cities across the country. And DW's Iran analyst Teresa Troppa is in the studio with me. Teresa, we just saw there Iranians out in the street defying government orders to sit out the festivities. What do you read into that?
Well, to me, that's a clear sign that Iranians, or at least some of them, are not that afraid, that they have not given up hope, and that they are still holding on to their culture, their traditions, and they're not willing to let the Islamic Republic take all of that away from them, despite the massive threats being issued by the government, by the security forces, and despite the regime essentially banning the festivities ahead. I mean, Jahar Shambisuri has long been viewed with suspicion by the Islamic Republic because it's ancient, it's pre-Islamic. And also the symbolism is very interesting. I mean, it's about renewal. It's people jumping over fires to leave the bad stuff behind and to feel more energy going into the future. So all of that, of course, is not really something the Islamic Republic wants at the moment. And that's exactly what people did on the videos we saw. They did exactly that. And they also shouted Javid Shah, which means long live the Shah, potentially referencing the son of Iran's last Shah, who's living in US exile and who's fueling the protests against the Islamic Republic. So it's highly political. It's not just a festival, it's definitely a show of defiance.
Yeah. The US-Israeli approach of trying to debilitate the regime to a point where then there can be, in their opinion, a popular uprising that can overthrow the regime, that has been slammed pretty widely as unrealistic. But, you know, from what you are hearing, is there a sense that there is, in some way, shape or form, a window of opportunity opening here, ever so slightly maybe?
I mean, at the moment, that's really hard to tell because essentially the regime has shut off the internet for almost 3 weeks now. So it's really hard to get through to any contacts. And the blackout has become even more intense in the last couple of days because until then you could at least call or be called from inside Iran. And that's now almost impossible as well. But what I heard while I still was able to talk to people was that this year, unlike last year during the so-called 12 days war, many people have not left Tehran because they were hoping that at some point they would be able to take to the streets again and kind of finish what Israel and the US are starting. And certainly the fact that the US and Israel have increased their attacks on the Basij forces, the security apparatus of the Islamic Republic, and the fact that they now killed like more senior officials like security advisor Larijani or the Basij chief Soleimani. So that's certainly kind of fueling the hope that the moment might arrive at some point in time. But at the same time, people are most likely also very frustrated with the fact how resilient the Islamic Republic has proven so far, despite all these killings. I mean, they have several layers of succession, and even with the supreme leader being killed, they're still very much in power at the moment. So the moment is certainly not there yet.
Let's talk about the new supreme leader, because we're yet to see him out in public. Where is Mojtaba Khamenei?
Yeah, that's the very big question. Everyone is asking that. And so far, I'm afraid there are no real answers out there, just only a lot of rumors. I mean, what we know fairly certain, that's also what the Americans believe, is that Mojtaba Khamenei was likely injured in the strike that killed his father on the first day of the war. It also killed a lot of members of his family. But we don't know how serious these injuries were or are. But the fact that he hasn't made any appearance is certainly raising a lot of questions and people believing that they must be severe. Some comments made by the president of Iran and also the foreign minister also kind of indicate that even they are not in contact with him, haven't been in contact with him, because some of his positions are still unclear. So apparently they don't really know where his positions are at the moment. People are speculating that he might have been flown out of Iran for treatment in Russia, for example, which is an ally of Iran. But I personally can't really imagine that's the case because so many people would have had to keep silent about that. So I believe he's still somewhere in Iran if he's alive. And if he is, at some point he will have to show up to kind of stop all those rumors. And there are a lot of dates ahead where he should show up, where he would show up normally, the supreme leader. The end of Ramadan is approaching fast. The Persian New Year festival is coming up. And then Islamic Republic Day. All of these are occasions where the supreme leader would normally make an appearance, and if he doesn't, speculation is going to go crazy.
Yeah, the regime is under fire, and in that position, they have really increased their crackdown on dissent. What can you tell us about the operations that are taking place right now against regime opposition?
I mean, cracking down on its opponents within the country has always been like the biggest concern of the Islamic Republic and always what they've done best. And since the start of the war, the Islamic Republic has even tightened its repression inside the country. We saw on state television the Iranian police chief basically threatening people who want to go out and protest, saying, like, if people take to the streets to protest, we will do to them what we have done to the enemy. Our hands are on the trigger. So that's quite explicit. And Iranians know well to take them by their word, because at the beginning of January, they just cracked down on an anti-regime protest movement and killed thousands and thousands of people, and also arrested lots of people who are still inside these jails. And people inside the Islamic Republic's jails are always the easiest targets. That's why many human rights activists are now really, really worried about these people who are there without any fair process. And we just learned today that the Islamic Republic has executed a Swedish citizen who was in jail because he was convicted of spying for Israel. I mean, human rights activists, of course, say that's a sham trial, but he could be the first one. He was the first one since the start of the war, but there's so many more in jail that could see the same fate.
Yeah. You alluded to it briefly before. In the past, you were able to keep in touch with your contacts on the ground whenever there was a crisis. It's much harder this time around, isn't it?
It is. Like, connectivity is nearly down to zero at the moment, basically since the start of the war, when they shut the internet, which is what they always do if they feel threatened, but this time it's even more intense. In Iran, there are so-called white SIM cards, people that have some connection to the government or to the military who have access no matter what. And even the people I know with these kind of SIM cards are now disconnected. So the blackout is really like almost complete. The only people you still see voicing their opinion are the foreign minister, for example, or some mouthpieces of the regime. So it's really hard now to get any information out of Iran.
That was DW Iran analyst Teresa Tropper. Thanks so much. Well, here in Germany, Chancellor Friedrich Merz says Germany would have advised the U.S. and Israel against going to war with Iran if they had been consulted. The Chancellor made the remarks in a statement to the German parliament as he gets ready for the upcoming European Council meeting in Brussels. Merz reiterated that Germany would not take part in military operations in the Strait of Hormuz. He said neither the UN, the EU, nor NATO had a mandate to do so. And here's some of what the Chancellor had to say.
We, the German government, share with Israel and the United States the goal of ensuring that Iran can pose no threat in the future, either to Israel or to the neighboring countries. At the same time, we've also made clear that we still have many questions about this war. To this day, there's no convincing plan for how this operation could succeed. Washington did not consult us and did not deem European assistance necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, we would have advised against pursuing this course of action as it has been pursued thus far.
DW Chief Political Editor Michaela Kufner is in the Bundestag and followed Merz's address there. Michaela, the German Chancellor was all smiles when he visited the White House days after the war started. Help us understand his remarkable change of heart.
Well, the Iran war is unfolding and it's having serious repercussions also here in the European Union. It also threatens to take away the US attention on security in Europe, particularly from Ukraine. To put it bluntly, energy prices at the gas station are going up here as well. And this is all becoming very tangible for European consumers. So it was very interesting to watch Friedrich Merz walk that very delicate balance of being more assertive and reminding the German audience, but also Europeans, that they should stick more together, that they should become more aware of their own power, particularly when it comes to economic power that is in dire need of reform. And at the same time, he did say on Iran that while Germany and Europe wouldn't join any kind of initiative there during the war, once the war is over, he did say that Germany would not shy away from having a debate on what it can do to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, that strait where 20% of the world's oil is being shipped through. So this also, in German terms, if I can translate that politically, is a pretty concrete commitment from a German chancellor by German standards. Of course, with German parliament having to agree on any kind of foreign deployment.
Yeah. So Merz's support for the war has steadily dropped. That is something Donald Trump is, of course, acutely aware of. How concerned are lawmakers about the future of the transatlantic relationship as a result?
Well, Merz never supported the war. He always differentiated between sharing the aims of getting rid of the Iranian regime and the constant threat to security in the region. But he reiterated here that he advised against. Yes, he didn't quote that previously out of the conversation he had, but he never really backed the war. He just remained silent on the actual action that the US president took. And here, of course, there is no interest in getting involved. There is no real backing when you look at opinion polls. And at the same time, there's the growing realization that the Europeans cannot make it on their own when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, but also economically, that this very tender, tiny plant of economic recovery that was on the horizon here in Germany could be trampled down by those ripple effects.
Yeah, you mentioned the war in Ukraine. That's, of course, a conflict that's much closer to home for Friedrich Merz. There, it looks like he'd like to take on a more active role in defining what the future will look like. Briefly, if you can, what did he say on the issue?
Yes, he keeps trying to create a connection between stability in the Middle East, now over Iran as well, and stability here in Europe. He sees that as a transatlantic issue. That's what he highlighted once again. The truth of the matter behind it is that while the Europeans did sit at the negotiation table here in Berlin just before Christmas in those negotiations over the future of Ukraine, they are no longer being heard. They're no longer taking a seat at the table, and he wants to get Donald Trump to let the Europeans have a say in their own future again. And that's why he's creating the conditionality that the Europeans will actually stand in for security in Ukraine, the stability, pushing back against Russia, only if they are part of the process that leads up to it. Remains the big question whether they are in a position to really apply those conditions.
DW Chief Political Editor Michaela Küfner, many thanks. And that's all for now. Remember, you can find more news on our website. That is dw.com. And you can also follow us on social media. Our handle there is @DW News. I'm Nicole Fröhlich from all of us here in our newsroom in Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Get everything you need to know to stay connected.
Best sleepwalking stories.
I've done that.
We cover the big things and small things that help you feel more local. Whether you're in the burbs or the bush, your corner of the world is full of stories that deserve a home. And that home is here on ABC Local Radio.
You can get in touch with me right up until the 8 o'clock news. It is good to be keeping you company.
New to ABC Listen.
In 2007, 4 people, including a 5-year-old girl, vanished in Western Australia.
The family lived a bizarre alternative lifestyle.
Did they run away or was it murder?
He's a very odd guy.
I just wished I'd asked a lot more questions.
We're digging into one of Australia's most baffling missing persons cases.
Something wasn't right.
Expanse, the Nan-Up 4. Search for the Expanse podcast on ABC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the programme. Tonight, the global energy crisis intensifies. Political editor Jacob Grieber on the budget crunch for the government. Also coming up, would you be fooled by this fake $50 note? The surge in counterfeit cash coming into Australia. And the fight to free Old Faithful, the 80-year-old crocodile taken from its home in Cape York and moved to a zoo. The war in the Middle East is shaking up preparations for the federal budget in May. 7:30's political editor Jacob Grieber reports.
The government's budget preparations are in full swing, with ministers meeting on a near daily basis to nut out the details. while the push for tax reform is high on the Treasurer's agenda.
We've made it clear in recent weeks that we are considering our options when it comes to tax reform.
But the first order of business is managing fallout from the war in Iran, which shows no signs of abating. The Treasurer will tomorrow deliver a major speech detailing bleak Treasury modelling on the war's economic ramifications. It shows there is now a very real chance that surging oil prices would send the inflation rate above 5%, hurt the global economy and wipe about $18 billion off Australia's GDP.
We want to make sure that we do everything we can to shield the Australian economy, households and businesses from the worst of global uncertainty. That will also be a focus of our budget coming up in May, but we won't be waiting until the budget.
There's an unmistakable sense of crisis on multiple fronts. The Prime Minister revealed today an Iranian attack landed near a United Arab Emirates airbase where Australians are stationed.
The Iranian regime is continuing to engage in, frankly, random attacks right across the Gulf region.
And fears are growing that fuel rationing will be needed if the war continues. The Prime Minister hosting a virtual national cabinet tomorrow.
We've been working each and every day as well with industry, but we want to make sure that states and territories that we have that coordination.
Beneath those pressing challenges lie the lingering long-term budget headaches. Government debt and spending are high by historical standards. Economic growth is weak, real wages are falling, and the tax system is increasingly seen as skewed against younger Australians. 7:30 understands the Treasurer will argue in his speech tomorrow that this is not the time to drop the ball on reform, a rallying cry to his colleagues and voters that will include a dire warning that productivity growth, a key driver of living standards, will take more than twice as long to recover from a long slump.
This is a once-in-a-generation